Go for it. USS Liberty. Look, I've been making friends. I don't know if that's the word. I think, in as much as I disagree with Candace Owens, I still think the treatment is unfair, but maybe she is deliberately being provocative because she wants this type of response. I still think it's unfair.
Yeah, I think the criticism of her is far excessive. If you wanted to confirm what people that are aligned with some of Candace's views on Israel believe, there's no better way to confirm their worst suspicions than to try to censor her, to unjustifiably criticize her, or Scott Horton or other people. I've been a very strong critic of Scott Horton on Israel. There's ways in which you can engage in that criticism without assuming that they hate all Jews, that they deserve the anti-Semite award of the year. I would say, doesn't Hamas kind of deserve the anti-Semite award of the year? Haven't they been the ones that actually killed innocent Jews?
I could think, look, if they wanted to go by social media accounts, I could think of one or two other people who I would have picked first. And I say tongue in cheek, I still don't think giving someone the label of anti-Semite of the year, that does more to foment anti-Semitic sentiment than it does to quell it. That's my own personal view.
It's a dumb thing.
So what is your takedown of her take on USS Liberty?
Yeah, so it's fascinating to me. So I did the hush hush years ago on USS Liberty. There's the official narrative. The official narrative on USS Liberty is, well, let me start with the undisputed facts. The pilots in Israeli Air Force attacked a U.S. naval ship in the Mediterranean Sea in the 1960s, leading to the death, disability, severe injury of sailors on the USS Liberty, the U.S. ship. Those facts are not in controversy. What is in controversy is why it happened. So some critics, including some of the survivors from the USS Liberty, say Israel did it deliberately, knowingly, intentionally, because the ship was clearly identified as a U.S. ship. They continued to attack after being made aware of it, and that the theory or premise is then why would Israel attack the United States when it was a critical ally during a live conflict with Egypt at the time? And the allegation that it was deliberately done to induce U.S. support of Israel against Egypt in that conflict.
Well, an alternative theory that I heard as well is that because the U.S. would have otherwise been not spying on, but gotten wind of illegal or human rights violation activity of Israel vis-a-vis, I want to say Egypt, but I might be wrong.
It was Egypt at the time. Yeah, there's that allegation. There's some other alternative histories that align with that. The anti-Israeli history says they did it deliberately and intentionally. The loosely semi-official narrative of the pro-Israeli interpretation was simply a mistake, that Israel thought it was an Egyptian ship disguised as a U.S. ship and continued to attack mistakenly, not malevolently or maliciously. And they paid a large sum of money at the time for those individuals disabled or killed by the Israeli air fighter.
Let me intervene. Hypothetically, if one were to adhere to the belief that it was Israel trying to interfere with the U.S. spying on or getting wind of Israel human rights abuses in Egypt or wherever, it seems that the wrong way to do that would be to blow up a ship. I mean, if I want to steel man it, I'm not trying to defend anybody. I think it's just as bad. If it's egregious incompetence, that's pretty bad as well. But if they were trying to interfere with the U.S. intercepting Israel human rights abuses, blowing up their ship is the wrong way to do it.
Yeah, there was always a lot of problems with the Israeli critical, skeptical narrative around USS Liberty that didn't make sense. What a lot of people didn't know, because the information was hidden by the U.S. government at the time and only came out in the 1990s, was that the U.S. government had deliberately lied to Israel about the placement and presence of its ships, number one. Number two, that the USS Liberty was not an ordinary naval ship. It was a spy ship meant to intercept communications that was best enabled by more close presence to the war zone than they had promised Israel they would engage in. That's problem number two. Problem number three, were intercepting Israeli pilot communications at the time. We knew from the pilot communications that Israel was confused about whether that was an Egyptian ship. And the pilots communicated in these intercepted communiques. They said, "This looks like a U.S. ship. Are you sure it's an Egyptian ship?" And the response from Israel is, "We've directly asked the United States, and they have said they have no ship in the area. It's not their ship. They have confirmed it's got to be a different ship."
Two questions real quick. Someone in our locals, I want to see where it was. Why didn't they fire back on the Israelis? I don't know if they did or they didn't. A lot of people make hay out of the flag on the ship. How visible is a flag when you're bombing it from the
It
air?
was all over the place, and the pilots could see it. The thing was, what is
They thought it was a double fakie.
Yeah, Egypt did it. This is the origin of the word
false flag. Okay.
It's a ship flying a flag, pretending to be representative of a particular nation that it's not. Pirates did it so they could sneak up to you and then put up the Jolly Roger and say, your ship is now mine. So it's one of the oldest scams. And again, so old that it's where the word false flag, words come from. So that's what, and the U.S. government knew that Israel knew that at the time, because it was part of the communications they intercepted, and they just refused to correct their misrepresentation. In addition, somebody within the Defense Department had in fact ordered the USS Liberty withdrawn because they were aware of the public promise that there were no U.S. ships in the area, no U.S. ships within 100 miles of the coastal miles, nautical miles of the coast. Instead, that information was never relayed to the USS Liberty. The people who are controlling the intercepts were also people who were responsible for communicating, and that was an agency, a young, almost virgin agency called the National Security Agency. What people didn't realize is the most compelling alternative take is not a pro-Israeli conspiracy, but an anti-Israeli conspiracy. Namely, there were people high up in the Central Intelligence Agency, the Pentagon, and the NSA who did not like Israel, who thought the greatest hurdle to them all playing Lawrence of Arabia, LARPing as Lawrence of Arabia, like they got to do with MI6 and the Shah of Iran for 20 years or so, from 56 to 79 or thereabouts, somewhere in that range, was they thought Israel. They thought Israel's presence was prohibiting the U.S. from owning the Middle East. And these people came from waspish camps that had gone to Ivy Leagues disproportionately, who had deliberately capped the number of Jews who were even admitted into the school. In other words, they were Jew haters and were very anti-Semitic. This information also wouldn't come out until the 1990s. Where a bunch of front organizations in the United States that were anti-Israel, they're network funded by the Central Intelligence Agency and their allies. So I think what really happened is this was an Israeli trap to set up the Israelis to attack the USS Liberty. And the hope was the controversy would be so hot that it would require the U.S. government to withdraw its support of Israel, knowing that that would sink Israel at the time, because this was right before Israel had yet acquired nuclear weapons, which, by the way, they did by stealing them from the United States. So I'm not a knee-jerk Israeli defender. But the USS Liberty story never rang true to me, and just on its face. I was like, some of this doesn't make a lot of sense to me, why the motives would align in this way. But when I really dug into looking at what our U.S. government knew, and those files, those organic original files, that's how you start to piece together maybe it was a mistake. Maybe for some reason Israel thought this would somehow help them. It's hard for me to imagine that. Our intelligence said otherwise at the time. We just wasn't disclosed for 30 years. But my guess is it was the last dash attempt of the anti-Israeli apparatus, sometimes called the Arabists. They grew up on Lawrence of Arabia as a book and a movie. They all thought they were the next Lawrence of Arabia. They were white Anglo-Saxon Protestants who are deeply anti-Semitic by nature, true anti-Semites, in ways I don't believe Candace Owens is. And I think she has this reflexive deference and trust in every theory that's out there.
Yeah, but I don't want to like
when she keeps embracing this loony nonsense, but I don't think she has an anti-Semitic bone in her body. I just disagree with her deference to these anti-Israeli theories. I fully respect Thomas Massey's position. We shouldn't be involved with Israel. I don't agree with it, but I fully understand and appreciate it. It's an honest position. It's not anti-Jewish to be that way. I disagree with people who claim that. But that doesn't mean every Jew-hating conspiracy theory out there is true, because you're skeptical of Israel and Israel's history. And on the USS Liberty, a thorough review of the organic evidence, I believe if presented to an impartial jury, would conclude that Israel was not malevolently culpable, but that some high-ranking U.S. officials likely were.
And it's interesting. I never actually put those two dots together. It occurred on June 8, 1967, which is right in the middle of the Six-Day War, which was, some people say, miraculously won by Israel. And
Israel's good at kicking their ass. I mean, you can say what you want about Israel. It's like the Ruskies. Ukraine's going to beat Russia. And it was like, just Google Russian working out with bear in wilderness. They have bears helping them work out. You're not beating the Ruskies. Could the U.S.? Yeah, but it's not a war I would eagerly embrace. That's for sure, darn sure. And if I was setting odds, I'd say 50-50 either way. with 10% chance we just nuked the whole world and we're all dead. Israel was really good. Israel was going to win that war against Egypt with ease. They were better prepped and prepared than Egypt. God bless Nasser. He thought he was going to lead the whole Arab world and unite them behind the Nasser embrace in a greater Egypt, with at the time a greater Syria. Long before Assad was there, Syria was part of Egypt in this alliance for a period of time, but they were nowhere near militarily equipped to defeat Israel. Israel, the Holocaust will educate you real fast about what you need, and they were darn good at getting together. You could dislike them, disagree with them, think they should exist or shouldn't exist. It ain't going to change the geopolitical pragmatic analysis that they were going to win that war, and they're darn good at whooping the Arabs. They just are. The Arabs, fight with them, lose, fight with them, lose, fight with them, lose, fight with them, lose, and usually always complain in the interim. Well, we don't want to have to suffer the consequences of losing. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
1948, can't acquire land through military means. Therefore, you can start whatever war you want and claim never to be able to lose land in the process. But if you gain land,
I always tell people, people might want to see how the United States legally claim title to land. So when they're like, "Oh, you can't claim land under military conquest," it's like, I get that's now international policy over the last 60 to 70 years. It's not been the way almost every country in the world acquire their land. And some people in the chat are like, "Oh, Barnes, you're saying everybody is a Jew hater that believes this." That's not my point. I'm saying be skeptical of conspiracy theories that Jew haters love. That doesn't make you a Jew hater because you happen to agree with that conspiracy. Maybe you're right. I'm just saying I'm skeptical when the Nick Fuentes of the world believe these kind of things. And God bless Candace, but she'd have a lot more credibility if she hadn't been telling me that Stalin was a Jew a month ago or so. So,
well, Robert,
okay, you fell off a tree and hit a few things along the way, a few mental nutcases along the way. You'd never go full Kanye. So that's my advice to Candace. But I don't think she does so out of Jew hatred. She's skeptical and critical of the nation of Israel, but believes a lot of ridiculous, loony things about Jews and Israel.
Well, it's once you start, and I can feel it happening, but you become sensitive to it when you start looking, the Jewish question, and you find that answer everywhere. You look at people Reid Hoffman, Jewish, but he's not Jewish, and so you try to connect the dots, and then every now and again one doesn't fit right in. You make a mistake because you're just trying to connect all of them to fit what you think is one.
They're part of centuries of elite conspiracy theories about Jews. They are conspiracy theories that were spread by elites as scapegoats for local problems, whether it was plagues, whether it was disease, whether it was bad management by government, whatever it was. This is centuries of anti-Semitism. And it's like, if you think a group runs the world, you're going to pick the one group that almost got eliminated off the face of the earth. That's a real weird group to run the world, to almost get eliminated from the face of the earth. So again, plenty of ground. I mean, I understand, Dave Smith has different opinions of Israel than I do. Scott Horton has different. Now, Scott Horton, you listen to him, and I think he goes bad. I think he goes a little crazy when it comes to Israel. So, debating a lot of these people is not super productive because they become crazy. I mean, that's just my view. I mean, you listen, you could just divorce yourself from the Israeli debate and look at the tone, the tenor they take, the style and structure of their arguments, what sources they rely upon incredibly, how they interpret sources and their methodologies. And you see it suddenly changes when it concerns Israel. And that's on both sides. There'll be insane arguments made on the pro-Israeli side. Like, why is Syria collapsing a good thing for Israeli interests? I'm not convinced of that at all. I get Netanyahu believes it, but it doesn't make sense to me. And I get they want to take over the Golan Heights all over again. Okay. But, they're just inviting trouble. I mean, has the war in Gaza really worked? The entire world is more turned against Israel than ever before. How does that really work? If people can go through and they can find me 50% pro-Israel, 50% critical of Israel. Unfortunately, that is rare. That just leads to Israeli supporters attacking you as anti-Semitic, and everybody else attacking you as goy or whatever. You're Jewish, Barnes. We know that. Where's your little cat, Barnes? Where's your Jew check? Are you happy about that Jew check you're getting, Barnes? From the certain elements and spaces of the world. But I think, it doesn't help Candace to be obsessed with it, to be frank. I get it's sort of building up a little niche. There's Jew haters that will pay you money for that.
It's not the niche. It's not the niche that you want, and it's not the niche that's going to be particularly kind to her for the duration of her internet life. So
she'll come across as crazy. That's what she's building herself up as. And these USS Liberty, anti-Israel supporters, they would have more credibility if they would do things. I mean, I just present both sides, I think, relatively fairly. You go back, I present the Candace side and the rest. Do you hear that from them? Do you hear the alternative from them? No. And it's like people that would never otherwise be skeptical of the U.S. military, or usually are skeptical of the U.S. military, and suddenly lose all skepticism of the U.S. military. And then I'll get questions where people are like, well, why did the survivors not recognize this? Well, there's two possibilities. One possibility is, why would the survivors know? Why would the survivors of 9/11 know whether there was a conspiracy of other people to do things on 9/11? They don't have, by being victims doesn't give them unique insight into the conspiracy that may have been afoot. Same is true with the whichever way the conspiracy you think went. In terms of, there's nothing about magical about being survivors of the USS Liberty that gives you either unique moral authority. I've never agreed with the idea that victims have unique moral authority. This is part of my criticism involving the Alex Jones cases. That we do undue deference to people just because they've been victims of something, to say now they get to lie about people or come up with versions of events that just aren't true. You also can't rule out some of these USS Liberty people claim that they had no idea they were on a spy ship. That's interesting to me. So let's just say if my theory is right, maybe some of them were complicit in it. And when it's somebody else, and it was kind of like the CIA conspiracy, they kept blaming Russia and Cuba long after the Kennedy assassination, long after LBJ had used it as cover for saying, hey, we can't tell the world this, so we have to cover everything up, not letting them know I'm covering up my own crime. And who was in charge at the time of the USS Liberty event happened? Was it a certain president known as Lyndon Baines Johnson? Do you really want to trust that he gave you an honest, reliable rendition of events? And if you really believe in USS Liberty, fine. Make sure to review the evidence that it's an alternative. Review the original documents that involve the intelligence documents that have now been publicly disclosed. And read that and see, does this, if I was a juror, does this make me want to indict Israel? Or does it make me want to indict Lyndon Baines Johnson?